The forest smelled of damp earth and gunpowder as Otto Keller stumbled through the frozen undergrowth, struggling against a level of exhaustion that made his whole body feel heavy. For 3 days, his unit had been pushed back across the Eastern Front, retreating under the relentless pressure of Soviet armor. Men nodded off between artillery blasts. Some collapsed where they stood. Otto felt himself slipping the same way until his lieutenant handed him a small metal tube stamped with nothing but a black triangle. Inside was a thick, tar-like paste. DIX. A new stimulant, the lieutenant said. Direct from the research division. Something to keep a man on his feet. No further explanation. Otto smeared a thin line across his gums. It tasted metallic, bitter, wrong. But within minutes, the exhaustion vanished. His eyes sharpened. His heartbeat steadied. The cold seemed to fall away. Colors looked brighter, details clearer. He could hear twigs snapping 100 meters away. It felt as if the world had slowed just enough for him to stay ahead of it. Miles away, in a laboratory at Sachsenhausen, Dr. Gerhard Orzechowski, one of the physicians behind the stimulant's development, reviewed early test notes that claimed DIX could keep a man awake for days. The Reich needed miracles now, and this paste was meant to be one. But miracles in wartime always come with a price. Keep watching, because Otto Keller is about to learn exactly how far one tube of chemical paste could push the limits of a human being and what it would take from him in return. Long before Otto Keller held that small metal tube in his shaking hands, stimulants had already seeped deep into the German war machine. In the early years of the conflict, when lightning-fast advances stunned Europe, soldiers carried something else in their pockets besides ammunition, Pervitin, tiny white tablets that promised alertness without sleep. Millions were issued during the campaigns of 1940 and 1941. Commanders praised it. Infantrymen joked that it made them feel invincible. Doctors warned that it did more harm than good, but their voices were drowned out by victory. As setbacks mounted and the war turned against Germany, the medical branch searched for something stronger. Reports reached Berlin about Allied use of benzedrine, another stimulant that kept pilots awake through long night missions. The Reich wanted its own next-generation formula, something more potent, something that could erase fatigue, fear, and hesitation. That responsibility eventually landed on the desk of Dr. Gerhard Orzechowski, a physician tasked with finding a compound powerful enough to keep men fighting long after their bodies should have collapsed. Working in Sachsenhausen, he proposed a mixture of cocaine derivatives, methamphetamine, and synthetic opioids, concentrated into a black combat paste. Field tests were rushed. Ethics were ignored. Desperation overruled caution. By late war, DIX was quietly prepared for frontline trials, which is how a half-frozen soldier like Otto ended up with a weapon no one fully understood, a weapon meant not to kill the enemy, but to change the man who used it. What happened next would prove far more revealing than anything written in Orzechowski's laboratory reports. Inside the Sachsenhausen camp, the work of Dr. Gerhard Orzechowski unfolded with clinical precision. His laboratory was cramped, lit by harsh bulbs that hummed softly above steel tables cluttered with glass vials, metabolic charts, and the earliest prototypes of the DIX mixture. Prisoners, selected without explanation, were ordered onto treadmills and forced to march until their legs shook. Then, each received a measured smear of the black paste across their gums. What happened next fascinated Orzechowski. Men who had been stumbling minutes earlier straightened. Their breathing steadied. Their eyes widened with unnatural alertness. They marched again, sometimes for hours past the point where any unaltered body should have collapsed. Notes from 1944 entries detailed these observations in cold handwriting. Reduced need for sleep. Heightened focus. Diminished emotional response. Delayed onset of exhaustion. Yet, beneath the scientific language was something else, fear. Some subjects grew erratic, whispering at shadows or moving with mechanical detachment, as if their minds lagged behind their bodies. Far from the laboratory, Otto Keller and a small group of frontline soldiers were quietly selected for the first battlefield application. They were not told about the camp trials. They were not told about the hallucinations or the emotional flattening, only that the paste would optimize performance. When Otto received his tube, he assumed it was just another stimulant stronger than Pervitin, maybe, but familiar enough. What he did not know was that he was no longer just a soldier. He was now the final phase of an experiment the war had forced into motion, and the true test was about to begin at the front. The paste hit Otto Keller in waves as his patrol moved into the fractured woods east of the Oder. At first it felt like clarity, clean, sharp, almost comforting. The fog that had clouded his mind for days lifted in minutes. The DIX seemed to pull his senses into alignment. Distant footsteps stood out like drumbeats. Wind through the branches sounded like a coded message. Even the smell of wet bark carried meaning. For the first hours, Otto believed the paste might actually be the miracle the lieutenant had promised. Documented stimulant trials from late-war Germany noted identical patterns. Soldiers reported heightened awareness, suppressed hunger, and extended wakefulness far beyond natural limits. Combat reports described men who moved with startling precision, completing tasks under fire as if running on a different clock. Fear receded. Fatigue dissolved into the background, replaced by an eerie, calculated calm. But as the patrol pushed through its second night without rest, the shift inside Otto grew stranger. The darkness around him throbbed faintly, as if his heartbeat echoed into the trees. Shapes seemed to move at the edge of his vision, shadows stretching, bending, twisting whenever he turned too quickly. Every sound felt amplified, every motion slightly too slow or too fast. In the documentary files, these reactions appeared under a different heading: distortions of perception, impaired judgment, risk of psychotic agitation. Still, Otto kept marching. The pace demanded it. His body obeyed, even as his mind began to slip from the edges. And the crash, the inevitable collapse, waiting on the other side of the stimulant high, was already coming for him. When Otto Keller finally stopped moving, the silence hit him harder than any artillery blast. The mission was complete. The patrol had returned, and the stimulant's grip loosened all at once. His legs buckled, his vision flickered. The world, which had stretched itself open for nearly 2 days, now collapsed inward like a shutter slamming closed. Otto sank to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. The physiological crash matched what Dr. Gerhard Orzechowski had already recorded during controlled DIX tests. Subjects exhibited severe tremors, violent headaches, irregular heartbeat, and overwhelming emotional rebound. After long periods of chemically induced wakefulness, many experienced a kind of neurological freefall where the body attempted to regain equilibrium but lacked the strength to do so. In the Sachsenhausen records, one line appeared again and again: complete exhaustion after cessation, often requiring forced rest or medical intervention. On the front line, Otto was no exception. His pulse hammered out of rhythm, his hands spasmed each time he tried to lift them. The clarity he had enjoyed was replaced by a crushing fog, thick and suffocating. Some soldiers who had taken larger doses collapsed outright, muttering incoherently or falling into a deep, fevered sleep that medics struggled to break. In Berlin, reports from the test units reached Orzechowski's desk. The impressive stamina gains were overshadowed by unpredictable psychological fallout and a level of physical degradation so severe that High Command quietly suspended further distribution. What had seemed like a battlefield miracle now looked dangerously unstable. But the true reckoning for both Otto and the man who designed the paste would come long after the war ended. For Otto Keller, the war ended not with triumph, but with a lingering tremor in his hands that never fully went away. Years later, long after the gunfire had faded and the uniforms had been packed into attic chests, he still felt echoes of the paste's grip, a restless energy beneath the skin, a creeping numbness that settled behind his eyes. Doctors could not explain it. Otto, who once marched for nearly 2 days without rest, now woke from sleep feeling more tired than before. The stimulant that had sharpened his senses had also carved something out of him, leaving behind a hollow space he could never refill. Dr. Gerhard Orzechowski carried a different weight. After the war, interrogators questioned him about his research at Sachsenhausen, about the trials, about the pace that pushed men beyond the body's natural limits. He defended his work as scientific necessity born from national desperation. Yet in private moments he reread his own notes, lines describing prisoners stumbling in circles, soldiers whispering to shadows. The human mind stretched too far and wondered whether he had crossed a boundary that no physician should ever approach. Scientific ambition had blurred into something darker, shaped by a collapsing regime that demanded results at any cost. DIX was quietly banned. The files were sealed. The remaining tubes disappeared into storage crates and forgotten archives. For most people, the drug became a footnote, another relic of a war filled with them. But for Otto Keller, and for the man who engineered the pace that changed him, the memory never disappeared. It lingered like a stain, a reminder that in wartime, the line between survival and sacrifice can vanish without warning, leaving behind wounds that no victory and no ending can ever fully repair.